Good. All right. Good morning. Good morning to Trinidad and Tobago. Good morning, the media. We always appreciate your presence as we continue our discussion with Trinidad and Tobago and the issues affecting Tobago. My name is Dr. Sean Ned. I'm the chair of the Progressive Democratic Patriots, and I'm joined by the political leader, Mr. Watson Solomon Duke, and we are here to discuss a particular matter today, and that is regarding the sit-in that occurred yesterday, and that would have involved the review of the budget for the THA. It was a very serious day, and a lot of things came out of that meeting, upon which the political leader will speak very clearly on. What we want to just focus on is a couple things before I'll end off. One of the things that persons specific details and numbers, because I think a lot of people get teary-eyed after hearing a whole bunch of these numbers over and over. The main thing that you want to hear in Tobago is money, right? Revenue generation. The chief sec spoke about revenue generation on a couple occasions, but after 2 years, we need to have some specifics about how exactly we are going to get this money flowing in, not at a grant level, but at a level that is able to sustain the needs of the island. This goes with a discussion about the autonomy and whether or not Tobago can manage its own affairs. You can't manage those affairs on a $50,000 grant, right? It's not enough. So part of this discussion today surrounds the need for THA to show that it can actually raise the amount of money using the divisions that it currently has. Is it that there is a plan towards raising this money in the industries of tourism, in agriculture, or whatever else? Where is that exact plan? Of course, the PDP would say is that we gave a mandate to you, the people, on which we are going to pursue. And of course, since the changeover and since these changes, we have not seen some of these items in our mandate take flesh. And of course, from there, we see no improvement along those lines. So we just simply ask, what is the plan for the revenue generation on a sufficient level to maintain the needs of the THA and Tobago going forward? Right? We have about, another year and a half before we get into election mode again. We must show some level of improvement along these lines. Right. Now, the next thing is, one of the goals of yesterday's sit-in was the allocation of funds, right? I heard monies $1 million and up being mentioned on every single item. I am not within the Executive Council. Many of us don't know how exactly these simply want to understand that when we have a limited amount of capital available to us, how is it that we constantly hear these large amounts of money when we can compare on the other side with people like Mr. Hochoy Charles, who would have had only, under 500 million to work with? Now, this is perhaps an understand this question. Are we being stingy enough with our monies when we have questions about contracts and the amounts being given to contracts? We have to justify all of these things when we have a limited amount of funding. So we already spoke about the need for revenue generation. So therefore you have to be careful about how much monies you want to use for investment. And then with the monies that you have remaining, you still have to cover payments for persons who have jobs, who have to be employed. All of these things have to be covered. Where exactly is that balancing act being shared by the THA? So these are two things, right? at this stage, I want to lay that there at the feet of the public to think about seriously. All right? And another point is the way in which the THA has been using certain slogans and ideas seems to come from the playbook of the PDP without giving us the correct, recognition, right? I had to drive past the budget presentation. So I'm not going to call nobody a thief, but if you leave the party and then you keep using slogans, in some instances you keep using colors, on, right? So understand that we all want to work with each other. But we have to be fair that if you decide to do something, you go all the way and do it. We even want to put the media, this supposed new party. Again, I just looked up online today and I saw no indication of the existence of this new party. Right? If the party does exist, at the Sea Bridge, right? Very huge launch party, big, everything good, right? We see flags, new colors, everything. But in the end, we have this mix and match of when things are things are TPP, and when you feel like using PDP stuff. It's very confusing, and we need to stop that. So again, coming back to the whole point, right? We had a large sit-in yesterday, and we have to understand that there's a need for the THA to explain to us as people, what are they going to do for revenue generation, right? And what are they going to do in terms of the little bit of money that they have? They need to show that they are stingy enough to protect the interests of the little bit of funds that they are getting from the government. And one last point, if indeed that we stayed together as was the intention, we would have had the political leader present with their support, because all of us were supposed to work with each other to push the agenda of Tobago down in Trinidad. Because right now you need a voice to push what they're exactly complaining about, that the finance minister and the prime minister, after they call them all kind of names, stay out of Tobago, and you're not the prime minister of Tobago. All these are words that are inflammatory, right? But you need to work with the central government in order to get the things that you need. And if it is that you want an increase in the budget allocation, you need to be able to work with our Trinidadian counterparts in order to encourage these things. So with that, I'd like to...
Thank you, Chairman Dr. Sean Ned. Indeed, you spoke volumes when you spoke there. Media friends, people of Tobago, Trinidad, wider world, I am experiencing a bitter, not sweet, sad moment. A bitter, sad moment. How could something so right go so wrong? On December the 6th, the entire country, Trinidad and Tobago, well, may I say Tobago first, and by extension Trinidad, celebrated the defeat of the PNM and the installation of a new and brilliant party called the Progressive Democratic Patriots at the helm of the Tobago House of Assembly. The ideas were brilliant. They resonated with the rank and file, the marish and the parish. The ideas motivated the people of Tobago to go out and vote insomuch that we won the PNM by 7,000 votes. It's indeed bitter to understand that with $5 billion in the hands of people who said they would fix things in Tobago, nothing has been fixed. It's sad that the person who pioneered the movement for change and the political revolution, the political leader of the PDP, was pushed out of his party and pushed out of the THA executive by a group of young, childlike people who felt that the world was theirs and all would be well because they are in charge. Almost 24 months later and $5 billion spent, what does Tobago has to show for it? $5 billion spent. We have nothing. Nothing, nothing, nothing. But as if they have become more mean and less sensible, they are now turning the Tobago House of Assembly legislature into a puppet show. That thing that's supposed to be the guardian of our democracy, where justice is supposed to be supreme, they are now turning it into a puppet show. Never in the history of Tobago House of Assembly was there ever a puppet show as now in the Tobago House of Legislature. Just imagine, yesterday we all sat and we were ready to start, which we seldom do. And we started not on time, but after the correct time, as usual. But sometimes when we want to start, we can't start because people who are supposed to be there are not there. And so it's a laughing stock. But yesterday, when the presiding officer was about to start, and she looked around the house, and she said, let's debate. And she put, for us to have the debate to begin, the person who was leading the debate was not there. Puppet Show House. The man who sent forward a motion for the House to debate. When we run through the whole order paper and we come down to the last thing on the order paper, the debate, when the presiding officer asked for it, the person in whose motion it was written and signed off on, to start the debate, he was nowhere. And like real Tom and Jerry, the presiding officer removed himself and said, let's stand down for a while. And so the whole House of Assembly, Tobago's business was deferred because one man was deliberately late. If you put a motion, come hell or high water, you ought to be there for the motion. There are laws that governs executive persons in the political realm, whether it is in Trinidad or Tobago, that once you are going to the meeting, they're not supposed to unnecessarily delay you. You know that? Because you are going to deal with the business of the country. Yeah? So they're not supposed to unreasonably delay you. Unreasonably. Whether they were sick or not, that's your motion. You have to be there on time. If you're not there, call and ask someone to lead the motion on your behalf and do the necessary legal work so it becomes legal. Puppet show number one. Coming to the end of that very same bill, when the bill was supposed to be, not bill, the motion rather, because we don't have bills here. When coming to the end of that motion, and the motion was supposed to be supported by the group of persons who wish for the motion to be debated, and the very person who led the motion was supposed to round up the motion and table the motion, they were not there. Missing again. Puppet Show House. And they want to celebrate Tobago Day. We'll get to that later on. Puppet Show House. Taking all of Tobago for a laughing stock. Can we get something right? Reminds me of little children trying to play mommy and daddy outside in the dirt, play muddy pot. And telling one, eat this. Eat this. But it's dirty, you know. Eat this. I make pie. Eat this. Look. They had dirty water. Drink this. It's juice. This is what they're doing to Tobago. Muddy pot. Telling us to eat this. Eat this. Drink this polluted stuff. Tobago has to do better because we have brilliant minds in Tobago. There are more persons who can do better than they are currently doing. They are making a mockery of the house. The presiding officer continues to wage some type of what I perceived to be war against myself. But I want to let the presiding officer know I represent the people of Roxborough Argyle, including Dallaford. And you cannot stop me from speaking on these persons' behalf. You can't. While you are responsible for order within the house has its own rules, which you did not write in your closet, nor on your bed top. These rules are voted upon and accepted by the assemblyman, not by yourself. It's nothing personal. But she has to understand there are rules within there. And when coming to the order of speaking, myself being the most senior politician on the island within the House of Assembly, that's right, within the House of Assembly, I'm the most senior politician there. All others came because of me. All others came because of me. In history, I would have sat with the PNM, who led then, and we would discuss the speaking order. That's how the speaking order is discussed and decided upon. When that is decided upon, it is then sent to the presiding officer and said, these are the speaking orders. Because there ought to be collaboration between the executive and the opposition in Tobago. I sat and I witnessed that the leader for the assembly business, Zorisha Hackett, came and she spoke to the minority leader. Very late, I think it was very unbecoming, asking him, well, look, if he's going to speak. And he said, yes, I'm going to speak after the mover of the motion, which is a non-question to me, but it shows they are totally unaware of what should be done. He has a right to speak, and you shouldn't ask him if he's going to speak. But then after that, she turns to me, and she said, when are you going to speak? And I said to her, I speak third. After the person from the executive moves the motion, and the minority respond to the motion, I then speak third. Because I'm neither fish nor fowl. I speak third. That's my choosing. The minority that cannot say where I speak because he doesn't represent me. All right? If I want, I can be the minority leader because no one voted for him. That's a reality. But I choose not to be a minority leader. I've been that, done that, move on. Higher heights. Let's understand that. But she's asking me, when do I say I'm going to speak third? She said, oh, well, Dr. Faith wanted to speak third. I said, well, I am going to speak third. She said, but anyway, it is who the presiding officer watch them going to speak next. She set the play. And they oftentimes, like little children on the school bus, message each other. You could see her reading messages up there and they sending messages down there. Like little children on the school bus, one in front, one behind, and they constantly communicate and pretending they are not communicating, bringing the house into disrepute. And I'm not calling, I said they, I'm not calling names, because they're quick to spend money that they don't have either. I don't know where they're getting it from, but an investigation will be done into that at the appropriate time for the big spenders who don't have money and have no business. Coming back to the issue, when the minority leader finished speaking, I rose and I extended his time because there was no one to extend his time. And I think it is good for the minority leader to always empty his points out before the House of Assembly. No regard to party lines, we are assemblymen, and I thought he had a right to finish what he wanted to say. He took it, and the presiding officer said we are going for lunch, because it was lunchtime. Up comes Ms. Zorisha Hackett saying, look, let's have one more before lunch. No attention was paid to my hunger, nor anyone's hunger inside there. No attention was paid to that. Because they have a number of votes, they all said, yes, let's Dr. Faith speak. So they got what they wanted. And she said, after Dr. Faith speak, we'll then go for lunch. No probs. We went for lunch. I came back to the house early, had my stuff ready to speak on, waiting for the presiding officer to give me the eye at least. Because normally there would be one in, one out. That's how we speak. One from the executive, one from persons who are non-executive members. To make the debate rich. You say yes, I say no, and we all justify our reasons. That's how debate takes place. But she came inside there, and as if she was batting on a particular side, as if she was playing for a particular side, her eyes was focused. As she sat in the chair, and the media will correct it. As she sat in the chair, she immediately called, so and so. So I rose up, and I point of clarity, and I asked her, I said, Ms. I'm presiding officer. How do you get to this speaking order? She's telling me, whosoever her eye caught will speak. That is a God syndrome. That's a God syndrome, definitely. They have become gods. When the presiding officer is low enough to say within the house of record, within the house of legislation, that whosoever her eyes caught will speak, to me is an attack on our democracy and all that we have fought for. Where is the balance? Where is the reasonableness? And for heaven's sake, the presiding officer would not look at me. She would not look at me at all. And it's not the first time. If you go back within the last 3 sittings, there was a time just like that. When I stood up to speak, I stood up to speak before one of the executive officers. And she said, Mr. Duke, take your seat. She don't call me assemblyman. When she remembers, she called me assemblyman. I am Mr. Duke inside there. I'm Mr. Duke inside the house. That's a level of disrespect she displays towards me and contempt. I am Mr. Duke. The others are assemblyman with a smile on the face. For me, it's a piggish behavior. Mr. Duke, I mean, they can't fight that which will remain. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. So it's a waste of time to try to fight me. But for Tobago on the outside, it's a disgusting show. It's very, very disgusting. Where is the balance? Where is the justice? Where is the equity? That you will not look at me at all. You don't look at me. And when I ask you, what is the standing orders? Well, you have to look at someone. That's not the standing orders. That's not the protocol. The protocol is the speaking order is decided upon the minority leader and the chief and the leader of government business, and they decide on the speaking order. When it is not done, the presiding officer ought to create a balanced debate where you have one in, one out, one in, one out until all have been exhausted, and then you could continue the repetitive cycle. I deprecate that, and I would not succumb to the threats or the bully tactics of the presiding officer. I want to let you know that. And if we can't fight inside here, we're going to fight it outside here. Because they were nothing. They was nobodies. That's who they were. All of them. They were nothing and nobodies until I found them. They were in the lost and found. I want to let people know that. All of them were in the lost and found. All of them. Come right down. They were in the lost and found. Nobody wanted them. Nobody could have seen them as politicians. It took an eye of genius to see people beyond their capacity. And I said, look, we can do this. Let's come together. All of them political virgins. Several of them have no O-levels at all on that team. None. One day I wrote to the presiding officer. I said, look, I want to know the qualifications of these assemblymen and deputy assemblymen, because they are leading Tobago's business, and Tobago must have the confidence inside of them. She said to me, that's an inappropriate question. She will not tolerate that question. That's how she operates towards me. But Tobago needs to know, what are the qualifications of those assemblymen and deputy assemblymen? Well, assemblymen and the chief secretary and, well, not chief, the assistant secretaries, I want to say. Yeah? What are the qualifications of the secretary and assistant secretaries? We have to do better than that. We have the blind leading the blind in many instances. And this is the reason for the bankruptcy. We gave them a plan, a mandate that says if we are going to fix Tobago, the first thing we have to fix is Tobago's autonomy. I'm coming home with that now. That budget was hogwash. That budget reprioritization was hogwash. Nonsense. Total nonsense. Total nonsense. It was made of smoke and mirrors, totally to deceive, with big language, flowery words, but its content was totally hogwash. Build a Tobago economy without first for Tobago rest upon the shoulders of the Deputy Chief Secretary. And here we have someone with a doctoral degree, a PhD, who has not the function of autonomy. Who has autonomy now? Who deals with autonomy? It's the Chief Secretary. He deals with Tobago's autonomy. How has it been going? It has been going nowhere. As Deputy Chief Secretary, I was tasked with the responsibility. I was tasked with the responsibility of Tobago autonomy, something which I said I wanted the office of Tobago in Trinidad. I never got that office. I never set foot in that office. I never got a table nor a desk in that office. It was always a long story why it couldn't be done. They deliberately kept me out of that office. Deliberately. They gave me a budget, that's speaking to Tobago now. They gave me a budget of $5 million. That's the budget they gave me to run Tobago Deputy Chief Secretary office. Yeah? They gave me a building to occupy where I was a total stranger in that building. They gave me an office within an office. They gave me as Deputy Chief Secretary an office within the Office of Sports. And so the administrator I had was sports administrator. The staff I had was sports staff. Yeah? The security was sports security. Everything was done by sports. The procurement officer was sports. I had no staff. When I try to hire basic cleaner, basic people, there'll always be a run around. You can't do this, you can't do that. It's not so. It can't be done. When I complain to the Chief Secretary, he's going to deal with it. They frustrated me till the point when they said, if you can't leave, you're going to get you there. You. That's what they said. And they clapped together. You cannot build Tobago autonomy by destroying the person who is leading the charge for autonomy. What was my plan? There would have been a department that deals specifically with that in the Tobago House of Assembly called the Intergovernmental Department, whereby we would have been constantly speaking to Trinidad on matters that affects Tobago. Things like the air bridge and the sea bridge would have been matters of constant discussions and negotiations and agreement. So the issue happened the other day when they removed the Cobosta and gave us a badge from Venezuela, a small badge, a toy badge from Venezuela, would never have happened. The issue of where we have insufficient flights would never happen also, because we would have been properly seated to go and have discussions with the relevant authorities and sign off an agreement. That's what I did for a living as a trade unionist. They never ever allowed me to function in my position. Never. $5 million. The cost of a trip to the World Travel Market is what they gave me to run my division. How could you imagine that? No administrator. I had to borrow one from sports. That was my administrator. And then they come and said, well, Watson Business was to deal with autonomy. On what budget again? On what budget again? Dr. Shaw Ned, he was one of the directors that responsible for the evaluation of various divisions within the assembly. Because to evaluate the divisions and to recommend corrective actions were part of my duties, to monitor them, policies, etc. They never ever gave him an office. Because remember, I had an office, someone else's office. He never had an office. And it was so for all of my persons I hired. We could not have performed work. Well, the minority leader pointed out the failure of all departments. is a natural flow because the departments are not being held to account. And now they are coming to tell Trinidad, we want more money. For what? For what? As the chairman rightly said, we have plenty money. $2.5 billion is a lot of money. Forget that. A lot of money. That. A lot of money. But where have 5 billion gone? We spent 5 billion already. Where has the money gone? How much of that money was spent overseas on contractors from Trinidad, while Tobago contractors starving and getting minor contracts? How much of that money? You're fighting down Trinidad for $166 million, bluffing, and say you're going to take them to court. You have to have people to go to Privy Council for that, There is no quick judgment, right? You have to go to Privy Council to get a judgment on that because they will carry it to Privy Council. You're fighting them down, stating that they owe Tobago $166 million because they didn't send sufficient funds over a period of time. But we have spent, according to the Prime Minister, $300 million on contractors from Trinidad, building roads with no economic value to Tobago. No economic value. Every single road built should be a priority road. And that road should lead to either more farming, better farming, or more commerce, more building of houses, more business enterprises, something to the sort. Nobody just build roads for car to run. Run and go where? Where are these? For instance, that road, that $20 million road from Bishops right down to TNT Corner, right? Through Dutch Fort. What is the value of that road? $20 million. What does it bring? Nothing. Nothing. No person from agriculture is using that. The businesses are not well machined and oiled because of that. They're not getting more customers. What you now create is chaotic traffic right there going towards Wilson Road traffic light. Every evening is traffic for about an hour or so. The road that they built in Argyle, that should have been a road for farmers. The road is still not paved. It's still there. Still there, not paved. $25 million. How much of that money remain in Argyle? None. None of that money remain in Argyle. How much of that money remain in Scarborough? The $20 million remain in Scarborough? Not one. All of it is in the banks in Trinidad being banked. None of it in Tobago banks. I'm asking the question again. How could you improve the economy if when you have money for developmental expenditure, you are sending the money to Trinidad and sending the money out of the country? We have to be able to do more with less. Therefore, I'm calling upon this House of Assembly that we have to cut out the frivolity. We have to cut out the wildness. We have to cut out the partying and let partying become a thing of the private sector. But let's pump some money into agriculture. Because based on our GDP percentage stats, agriculture and the manufacturing sector, they represent 2%, based on a study done in 2022. Right? And a study repeated by the Chief Secretary in his budget presentation earlier this year. 2%. Imagine, we are speaking about food security for all. Yet the GDP that agriculture brings we should pump some of that carnival money and heritage money into manufacturing sector. Because clearly those sectors are played out and let it become something of the village. None. How much money Tobago Carnival brought in? None. They have taken in excess of $30 million. But he's going to fight down Trinidad for 106. CNG is much cheaper, and Tobago persons as part of Trinidad are urged to have their tanks replaced with CNG. There's no place in Tobago you can refill CNG. If you acquire THA vehicles and make them electric vehicles. So if your vehicle shut down in Palatavia, who could help you fix that? Who could choke something and help you fix that? It has to be wrecked and go back to the manufacturing. And if they tell you it requires a part for $500,000, you have to buy the part. It's just not going to drive. Ask the police. They have a lot of vehicles parked up all over Trinidad in their stations. Good looking vehicles, but they're not being fixed. That's money being laid waste there. I would say to my colleague, the Chief Secretary, before you start talking these nice talk, ensure that the people of Tobago are well trained in that which you're bringing here. If you're talking electric vehicles, then ensure they are well trained. And if you're talking electric vehicles, let them also have CNG fuel at all gas stations. Let's lobby for that. These were things I would lobby for. Instead, we have the Deputy Chief Secretary in a world of our own where healthcare is failing and failing rapidly. And everything for them is anger. But train them to carry opposition politics into government. Opposition politics is opposition. Government is government. You can't carry that type of a way into government. You have to be now responsible for every cent you spend. In opposition, you question every cent. But in governance, you'll be responsible. We expect more from them. They spoke about increasing the spending for Tobago by using some special purpose company as idiot. But borrow money from where? Borrow money from how? If they follow the trend, Tobago can only borrow money from central government. Take a loan, they must have a loan guarantee. They could only, Tobago Self-Assembly is like a normal business. It's a corporation, like assets. You must show which of these assets that you could dispatch with. If you default in your loan and they don't have assets. So that again, they are bullish talk and giving people impression that borrowing money is easy. When the former THA under the PNM wanted to borrow money, they got 300 million borrowed from Trinidad because they are awarded public-private partnership. Well, the jury is still out on that one. The former PNM-led executive under the Chief Secretary, Mr. Over London, would have engaged with some private sector people to have a board arrangement. There's $1 million for a certain amount of years, and then they will own the building thereafter. That has not gone well because the central government felt that the early judgment came from the appeal court, where the appeal court concurred that the THA cannot enter into these arrangements like that. In November, Joel Jack, the former Secretary of Finance, would have said they are going to appeal the matter. I think the matter is now at the Privy Council. It will be a foolish assembly to go and engage in more PPP arrangements with private sector people, knowing that a jury is still out on that, and the last judgment without the permission of central government. Why? Because all the bills paid by Tobago are paid by central government. That's why we want autonomy. That's why autonomy, that's why they should not have remove autonomy from being the special focus of one secretary. But they have not done that. They have put it for Tobago D to further his rant and his rave for autonomy. The Chief Secretary, Mr. Farley Chavez Augustine, greatest of respect to the office he holds. That on Tobago Day, the day on which Tobago asks your utterances, though you have made some utterances before, you should taper yourself with those utterances. Do not sing as a glad man. Do not politics anymore. You are now the Chief Secretary with responsibility for an entire country. Do not seek to make the holiday. There's nothing to celebrate about that. This Tobago House of Assembly is a watered down version of what Assembly governed over an independent Tobago. And that's facts. Tobago was not linked with Trinidad. What we have is a war, a different value system and different autonomy. Do not attempt to create a holiday, because you cannot create a holiday in Tobago. You are not so empowered. Do not make yourself a mockery, and do not mock the thing. President of this country. It can only be declared by the president of his country. A two carnival. And you want to now have an additional day, holiday. They said Trinidad and Tobago is the home of holidays. Most of Tobagonians is the autonomy. How is that going? How is it faring? Are you going to just use it as a magic wand and shout to Trinidad, we want our autonomy? Expect it to happen? When you're in government, you have to keep speaking. Gaza and Israel still talking, trying to find a truce. Yeah? China, the president of China, with the Chinese people of America speaking to them. Russia and America still talk this kind of way of Tobago House of Assembly, which I love to call yourself. Please demonstrate some responsibility on Tobago and do not speak out of public holiday, and do not strut or stick your hands in the face of the government in Trinidad. It will not smoothen the relationship, it will make it bitter. And not better for Tobagonians. I've allowed you. And you did it to the people of Tobago, and we allowed you to, stating you have no commitment to any mandate. You're independent. And we allow you for that. Though we voted for a PDP team, you claim independence. And so in closing, I ask for the people of Tobago to forgive the misdeeds of this administration. They continue to remind them of what you voted for. And what you expected. Continue to hold them accountable as they go forward. With 2 years again to go, we expect.
I'm so curious as to what's your status now in the THA assembly, given the fact of yesterday's rumblings and events.
But I will be there at the next sitting again. I intend to be there at the next sitting. And I'm not going to give up my ground so easily. I will stand my ground inside there. Remember, these places are places where so many things can be said and done inside there. So I'm not going to give up my ground. I'm not going to walk away. I'm going to stand my ground and fight and defend the people of Roxborough, Argyle, Ford, and the people of Tobago by extension. Enough nonsense.
Mr. Duke, you said in your press conference here that some of your former assemblymen here, that they don't have any qualifications, but you chose them and they are in power now. You are belittling them.
No, I'm not belittling them. I'm saying I'm disgusted with the fact that if you don't know, you don't know. That's the reality. I'm not claiming what you are claiming. I'm claiming that if you don't know, you don't know. And nothing is wrong if you don't know. I don't know some things too. Hence, we built a team that will listen. So many plans. We even had a plan to monitor every single division, strengthen them and take corrective action. Dr. Now we are saying let us forgive them for past mistakes, but let us not forget. Let us hold them accountable. Tobago still gunman. That doesn't make sense. Mr. Augustine still has a mind for an opposition whole. What's happening? It's a football game out there now, right? And you have to know sometimes when to harden up and when to soften up and when to be consistent. He doesn't know that. Continue being a miniature politician if he listens to these people. He has to be bigger than that. And so part of my reason I'm speaking here today is to say to him, you have to be bigger than that. The government. That's foolishness. You don't do that, right? What you want to do is that say to the government, we understand your position, but we will continue to have discussion. Monies. Say that. Use determination again. Statics. And I want to
And then what about the idea of triggering the DRC for us to be able to